Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, sorry about that, Tide. My mic was off, so I'm going to go back and start over, and then I'm going to edit this stream so that I don't look like a complete fool. Um, so, uh, what I was going through is tonight I'm going to try to bust through as much of the 2.6.0 release as we can and see how far we can actually get. Optimistically, there's not that much here, so I think we can probably get through most of these items. So, if people have questions or there's examples or whatnot you want to see, I have no problem deviating. Otherwise, my go-to setting is I'm just going to keep working through this and see how much of this we can get knocked out. I think I'm actually going to ignore the bug for now and start at the bottom and work up because the easier ones are at the bottom, and I was going to boost my confidence before getting too carried away. So this first one down here, we'll get this guy fired up. So pull request 283. So I've left this one open for quite a while. For those people who are interested, the basic premise of this one is I'm not Sergey, and I will not try the last name because I'll try to avoid making a fool of myself. Was needing the actual brush colors specified as resources for the purposes of actually being able to build out alternate themes. So if you were going to say retheme some other control library, like I think he was using the exceed controls. It's very hard to retheme if all you have is the brushes defined in the resources and not the actual colors themselves. So if you need to, say, redefine a brush with a color, you can still do it, but you have to go through some extra steps, and it would be easier if this was defined in here. Now, thankfully, I don't think we're going to take this pull request as is because this is working on the old theming library stuff, and I am very much looking towards the new theming library code. So, but I left this in here as a note to myself to not forget that we wanted to include this feature as part of the new theming code that's actually going out with 2.6.0. So, backing up, so the guts of the new theming code, for anybody who hasn't played with it, really kind of boils down to this set theme call on resource dictionary extensions. It acts on a resource dictionary and takes in one of these iTheme objects. So let's look at these real quick. So the iTheme objects are really just a list of colors. That's all they are. Ideally, this solves a lot of the problems that we fought with in the past where people want to declare their own custom color themes, and it's really difficult to go through and get and specify your own themes, especially if you want to toggle between the built-in themes, your own custom theme, and that. So now, worst case scenario, you can just implement an iTheme, but there's actually some clever tricks to hopefully cover all of the common cases. So real quick, let's just take a look at this. So in the demo app, in the app.xaml, there are I tried to leave in comments showing off the different ways of doing the theming. So one is you can go and do the same way that we've done in the last, I forget, probably since the beginning number of versions, at least in all the 2x versions. You can just declare the resource dictionaries where you declare light or dark theme, you declare a primary color, and then you declare an accent color, and that defines all your color brushes. Great, fine. This works great, but if you're like me, you can never remember exactly what these are, and so you end up going back and copying and pasting from another app or the demo app just to try to remember these things and toggle out just these colors, which has always been a little obnoxious to me. So in the 2.6.0 one, there is now new markup extensions that just return new resource dictionaries. So for example, rather than doing this bit of work here where you declare light, deep purple, and lime as your accent color, you can do something like this, where you declare the base theme either light or dark, and because these are enums, you get nice IntelliSense. Inherit is not currently implemented, so if you specify inherit at the root level, it won't do anything. You'll get neither the light nor the dark theme brushes, which isn't quite right. At some point, I want to go through and have this when the user's on a Windows 8 or 10 machine, actually pull the system defined state, whether it's light or dark theme, but that is not implemented yet at the root level. So for now, pick light or dark, but then you've also got enums for your primary and accent color. So rather than these three lines, which are somewhat difficult to remember the URIs for, you can just specify a couple enums and you're done, right? And then for those people who want more control than just the built-in theme colors, you've also got the custom color theme, which the base theme is still the same, light or dark, but then you can specify any sort of RGB color that you want. So, you know, if you want to just go through and specify something like that to get lime or whatever other color you want, great. You can then build these out, and then based upon whatever color you pick here, it kind of picks arbitrary light and dark hues. So this is effectively the mid hue for the color, and it'll do some color magic on the HSV color space and convert to light and dark versions of it. So those are the new color themes, but ultimately if we walk through how all of these themes work, what they end up doing is really just calling set theme on a resource dictionary, which is all these markup extensions do, is they build up one of these theme objects, call this set theme method, and it walks through this set solid color brush and makes sure that all of our brushes are defined. It is worth noting there are technically this secondary accent brush and secondary accent foreground brush. These should be considered deprecated and obsolete. So if you're using these directly in your code, please migrate away. The appropriate changes is going to be these secondary brushes. So specifically secondary hue mid brush and foreground brush are the direct replacements. But now we also have light and dark hues for your accent color as well. So the library right now is only using the mid stuff, but these other light and dark versions are available. Okay, so all of that said, what this issue was actually looking for is to take these colors that are being passed in and actually store them as resources as well. So I'm going to jump over here and, like a good programmer, create a branch. Let's see. And because I can't remember my fix, 683. Great. So we will create a branch. That way we can pull request it back in when we're done, and away we go. And I think this is going to be a very simple bit of code to write, because in here we're already passing in the color value as well as the name. So I think the simplest thing to do is down here, before we get too far carried away, is just as simple as source dictionary and spelling counts. You must spell at least consistently in our industry. I think it's going to be as simple as that one-liner, which is much simpler than what it was in the old API. So again, I'm less interested in taking the pull request as is, but I do want to make sure we get that same equivalent feature. So if other people want to go through and theme this stuff out, they can. And I believe that just works. It is important to note that if you are using the old style of setting your resource dictionaries like this, you are not going to pick up this feature. And I'm not real concerned with that. I suspect most people will migrate off if this is the feature that they're looking for. So again, I'm going to call this good enough. Sergey, if you happen to be watching this at some point and this doesn't meet your needs, please shoot me a message and reopen. And I would love to discuss further. But I'm hoping that being able to do this should solve it. So that is not where we are going. There we go. So let's see. Add color resources in addition to brushes. I promise I can spell. I'm just not good at it when people are watching. I believe there's an old adage that says your typing skill goes down based upon the number of people watching you type, and if you're posting on the internet, it goes down a lot. Or maybe in my case, not too much if people don't enjoy watching me. Okay, so simple change, commit, and we will push this guy up, and then sure. And then we will just pull request that in and get that done. So pull requests, and we'll make sure the CI stuff passes, which I don't believe there's anything. So hang on, where'd it go? Claimed it was pushed. Fix origin, fix 683. There is my button. GitHub was just a little slow. Let's see, we will put this in the 260 milestone, create pull request, and then we are just going to mark the other one as superseded and close it. Let's see here. So here, and seated by some comment, and one more down, and then as soon as this guy goes green, which shouldn't take it but a moment, we'll merge it in, and that will be one less thing done. Okay, back to my milestone list, and let's just keep going on our way up. So this added stack bar message, ignore duplicate. This is something I've bumped into before on my own projects, so I was glad somebody was willing to pick this up. So here's the issue for it, and there's already a corresponding pull request for it. So in short, on the snack bar, you're able to enqueue messages, but being able to ignore duplicates had to be done on a per message basis, which I always felt a little awkward at times, which I was clearly not alone in that, because ultimately, especially if you're using the message queue, you want to go through and actually turn it off at the queue level, and just sort of have, I won't say a global setting, but one that applies to every message that goes through that queue. So I had put a few docs on here, and it was pretty simple, new Boolean property, and then check it on the pump async. So we are going to check the pull request for this, and I believe it is as simple as that. So this is the pull request for it. And let's come down here, and we'll just check this one, and I think it should be as simple as, so checkbox for the demo app, and then there is a property on the message queue. It is important to note that the snack bar message queue, I'll pull that up real quick, is not a, it can't have a dependency property on it because it doesn't derive from dependency object. So that's why this property isn't necessarily bindable. So if people are wanting to bind to this, there's going to be a little bit more work that needs to go in. But given that this is a new feature and not necessarily just a straight up object, I'm not sure that that's a big deal. That might be a nice enhancement in the future if somebody wants to go through and look at actually making these properties bindable. But it does add a bit of overhead and complexity to make this into a bindable object. So, but ultimately, if ignore duplicate is on, let's see here. Let's check this out because I want to, this guy is, what is around this? So if ignore duplicate, but is this actually doing an ignore all? Oh, I think this if, no, because this duplicates the same message, ignore duplicate. So this is correct. Okay, cool. So, easy merge. For newer stuff, I would probably also ask for a unit test on that. But given that this was submitted long before we had a unit test project on here, I don't retroactively add requirements. So this meets all the requirements that were put on there in the initial bit. So good enough for me. So we will. Oh, before we do that, I want to sneak this guy in too. But we will do that. Delete our branch. Confirm squash and merge, and all the things go through. Perfect. See, I was thinking there was a lot of easy items. Easy to boost my confidence quick. Okay, I've lost my place. Let's go back, milestones and 260. And this guy should have gotten resolved when the pull request went, but clearly it didn't, so we can just close it. Because it should be, yeah, it's linked right there. Typically, if you put as one of the lines in your description, fixes, pound, and then the issue number, it'll auto-close these, which makes it mildly nicer for me, but not a big deal. Okay, color picker, add hue sliding. So let's see, which one? This is where we start getting into the more interesting ones. So this is going to be a change to the new color picker control. So 260, we added a color picker control to support all of the new theming stuff. So because there is actually the ability to pick arbitrary colors, we wanted a reasonable color picker built in. Ideally something that was kind of similar-ish to the way the material design picker works. So we got something close to that. Update icon pack is just a script run, so a little less concerned. But you know what? Let's go through and let's do this one first, because this will be another quick and easy win, and then anybody using the preview packages can pick it up. So right now, the icons built into the library are built with a script, and that script has to be manually run, which is a little obnoxious. I do have plans to add it in. So right now, we're kind of in a transition period between AppVeyor and Azure DevOps. So I've got both Azure DevOps running as well as AppVeyor running simultaneously. So when you do a pull request, the verification you see is coming from Azure DevOps. But when it actually does the NuGet package build and release, that's coming out of AppVeyor. So I've got the Azure DevOps building it. It's a matter of once I'm confident that it's working the exact same as what AppVeyor is doing, I'm going to switch over the NuGet publish out of AppVeyor, and then we can let AppVeyor just kind of sit there for a little bit, not being used, and then eventually it can go away and we can use DevOps for all of it. The other advantage of DevOps is I'm wanting to put in an automatic script so that it runs, say, nightly or weekly, and just goes and pings out looking to see if there's updates to the material design icons, and then runs through and queues up a pull request. That way, when there's changes, we'll get an automatic pull request that comes in, and that can be reviewed and merged and actually get that going. So I'm hoping that will be a simple thing to do. Again, not 100% confident. If somebody wants to take a stab at doing a simple PowerShell script for that, that's probably the way I was looking at doing it. There's a few other things that I'm looking to get scripted as part of the DevOps pipeline, but that should be simple. So for anyone interested in actually, like if you want to see where the resource generation happens, there's an extra solution file right at the root of the repo. So Material Design Toolkit, Resource Generation Solution. And then this guy fires up, and I always have to open Program CS because I can never remember exactly how this guy works. It sounds like my dog is excited about something. Let's see, so I need to pass in what to my main method. So if we pass in args, generate XAML, generate JSON, all swatches, because we also generate the color themes. Come on, Visual Studio, you can do it. I promise, it's not that hard to open a solution. I'm sure it's actually probably the resharper going and trying to grep the entire solution. So if we pass in a argument of icons, it'll do the icon thing and run. Great. So I think I might even have this already set because I think doing icons was the last thing I did anyway. But for command line apps, if people haven't done this before, you can either go and just manually invoke them on the command line, but on your debug, oh, doesn't look like I have it. You can actually just specify command line arguments to get passed when you launch this thing with debugging, which can be very convenient. So we'll just fire this guy up and verify that we actually do the icon thing. And so this will actually run, go out, query all the latest icons on the materialdesignicons.net, pull them down, and build out the enum. One of the changes that went in 2.5.0, I think, is rather than just using one enum value, because there's a lot of names for a given icon, it actually generates duplicate enum values with the various names for it. But then we had a bug with that in that enum members can't differ just by case in the XAML, even though they can in C#. So there's a fix in here in that it'll only grab the first, I think it's the first one that it sees for casing, which I think is fine-ish. There's probably some special cases that need to be worked out, but I have not actually gone through the entire enum member to make sure. So this guy fires up. We hit our breakpoint. Great. So we are actually doing the icons. Everything works the way we expect. And we'll just let it go. So go get me my icons, please. And then hopefully this shows us a whole bunch of enum changes, along with a whole lot of XAML changes as well to go along with the scalar icons for each of these. Again, one of the things that I am hoping to do is to get this script running automatically, like I said, either on like a nightly or a weekly basis, just so that we don't fall behind, because it very consistently happens. I try to keep an eye on the material design icons, but I have a lot of things to keep an eye on, and it's very common that they get a release out and I don't even notice. So I do appreciate when people at least let me know. And if people want to submit pull requests where all you do is run the script and say, hey, there's new icons, here's the pull request for it, even better. I approve. It can be a quick and easy win, because this does take just a minute. And while that's running, I'll show what it's actually doing in here. So there's some fancy code in here where it actually pulls down all the icons, update enum. The interesting part in this is the way that it's actually building up the C#. So it's going through some of the code analysis APIs to actually go through and build out the C# so that it's reasonably generated. So it's not just doing string munging and string concatenation. It's being somewhat intelligent about it and formatting and all of that jazz, which makes it much nicer. And it also means that it takes it a little bit longer, especially with all of that parsing that is in there. What are you? Though normally it doesn't take me this long. Usually it runs for maybe a minute, maybe two. It could be because I'm streaming and it doesn't have a whole lot of stuff, because it downloaded that fairly quickly. And for each of these enum members, it does have to loop for a little while. Let's just make sure we're still chugging along at a happy clip. So far, so good. Okay, well, while you think about what you've done, oh, finished. Excellent. Okay, let's go see what you did. And I was on the wrong branch. So we will want to switch back. Get me back on master, please. And pull up. I think we can just whack this other one here. Come on, I know. You want to stash and then pull. I should have pulled first. Go ahead and think about it. And I think we can be done with our resource generation. Yeah, I know. The new version of GitKraken occasionally gets itself confused when you try to pull up on things and it can't figure out how to pop its stash. So let's just clean up this history tree real quick and it'll figure itself out. So delete. We're going to pop our stash back on top of master. There should be no conflicts. Great. That looks better. Okay, so come back through here. So pack icon data factory. I believe this is going to be the one with all of the icon, the actual SVG data. Yeah. So this is one really, really, really big line. I'm not even going to try to read it. Though usually I will eyeball this one. So arrow left, right, right bold. So we picked up quite a few icons clockwise. So this is what you'll notice when I was commenting that it uses all the enum members for something. So there's an icon called auto renew, but it also has aliases for clockwise arrows, circular arrows, and circle arrows. So you can use any of these enum members, but you're still going to end up, even though there's 4 enum members, you're still going to end up with the same icon in each of them. So when you see those, that's all that is different aliases. Same thing there. So this looks pretty good. I'm going to assume we're fine. I always like looking at the removals just to see scatterplot hexbin. See, the only thing I don't like about this is technically a breaking change. Oh, I should probably call these out. So let's go, because I always try to make sure people know. In general, we try to follow semver for all of the changes. However, there's certain breaking changes that I'm willing to allow through without necessarily revving the major version with just the release notes. So specifically for your pack icons, if you update to a version and you realize that something's not working, check the release notes. I've tried to always call out when one of these changes and what's the new name for it, because a lot of times, because this is an external dependency, when they update, things like this simple casing between lowercase p and uppercase p can cause people problems. So just be aware of that. Let's go through, and I just want to document these guys real quick so I don't lose track of them. So let's jump over to my releases page. And so I do keep a running release notes that are on here. So this 2601 people won't likely see, but let's actually put this as part of the wiki. I think is the easier place. Also, in regards to the wiki, if people ever want to help out and edit, please feel free to edit this. This is not just my just for me to edit. It's open to everybody. And so if you find something that's wrong or you want to contribute something, please feel free. You don't necessarily always need to ask a question. If this looks like you typoed something, Kevin, the answer is I probably typoed something. A lot of times these are done quickly, and I thought I had a release notes page in here, but maybe it's just on the releases page. Okay, maybe it's just here. So we're going to edit this one, and you'll notice this is a draft release, so you won't necessarily see this showing up for everybody. This is mostly where I keep my own release notes so that people can have them. I just build them as stuff gets merged. So pack icon. Name changes. So we are just going to, and I'm trying to remember how to, is it 1, 2, 3 indent? I think this is how you do it. Yeah. Or is it just 2 indent? I think it just might be 2. Markdown wizard, I am not. So this guy was changed to this guy, because I'm less concerned with adding in the new ones and more concerned with adding in the breaking icons, which is going to be all around these deletes. Mail, email. So this, the mail alias was just removed. So if you were using mail, switch to email. And that will take care of that one. Okay, perfect. So we'll keep that draft going just so that we have those issues documented. And updating pack icons, fixes, and let's grab that. I hit save draft, didn't I? Great. Let's see, 1276. And this one we aren't going to necessarily pull request. I'm just going to cowboy it in and be done. That should knock another one off the plate. Only a half hour in and we've already knocked off most of the issues. Now, to be fair, I knocked off all the easy issues. So that guy is now closed. Okay, so where to go next? Where to go next? Where to go next? I think I probably want to pick on this outline text field box because if I remember right, this one was the easier one to look at. So, bug 1282. Is this bug not in? This bug didn't get milestoned. Well, let's fix that. There we go. So this is the issue here. So if you go through and create a text box with the material design outline text field box and set a background on it, the background is actually expanding over the top of this border. Basically, the border has a rounded color. This guy was sitting on top. And normally, if you don't set a background color, it just lets the border show through and you have no idea that it's writing on top. So, but the moment you set a background color, you now get this ugly looking corner and it ruins the nice rounded edge. So, we had a wonderful pull request here, but I think for this one we're going to actually check it out and make sure everything's working. So, pull request 1283. So let's get master should be pulled up. Let's check out 1283. We'll go take a look at these changes. While it's thinking about that, I just kind of want to eyeball this. So all of these changes here, basically the change was rather than having the template binding for the background brush being applied to this inner border, to move that template binding to the outer border, which is what actually then ends up getting the corner radius set on it. So this is the border inside the one that actually had the gray outline. This is the guy that was able to ride outside. The other thing that would have probably worked as well is to just apply the corner radius down here so that this one also gets clipped appropriately. But due to this padding, I'm not necessarily sure if that's probably not the right, that's not the right fix. I think this is probably the better fix. The one thing that I want to look at is whether we actually need to set the background to transparent or whether we can just omit it. So in WPF, there is a difference between not setting a brush and setting a brush to transparent. Visually, they end up looking the same, but transparent can cause different hit testing. So when you go to click, if you have an element that has a background of transparent, it is available for that element's available for hit testing as it's trying to figure out what element is underneath your mouse. Whereas if you omit the background altogether, it usually won't be hit test visible and it'll fall all the way through. I I realized they used the phrase hit test visible, and there's a property that matches that name. Slightly different. So in general, if you can avoid setting transparent and just omit the background, it's slightly more performant just for that reason. So we're going to take a peek, first of all, to make sure that this works, which I suspect it does. And then we're going to try dropping the background altogether and make sure that it still works. And I think that should be all that it takes. So there's that. Visual Studio, reload the universe. Yep, go think about everything, and we'll walk through and do this. So for this issue, I think it was as simple as just this guy here and setting a background. I tend to pick fuchsia whenever I want a visual to do, because I find fuchsia to be one of the bigger eyesore colors. And so every time I see a large block of fuchsia, it says, ah, you forgot to finish something here. Some people may use it in their app. I tend to avoid it. But that's just me. I am also not a designer, so I would not take color advice from me. Come on, Visual Studio. I know this is hard. I know this is hard. At some point, I am looking at getting a slightly better streaming setup so that I don't have quite this lag when I'm going through and doing it. Because just running this is chewing 40% of my CPU, and that doesn't count Visual Studio and ReSharper trying to help. Okay, so that guy is now loaded. So let's go up and first of all, let's go change something in our demo app so that we actually have it. Because this pull request only changed the style, and we want to pick on changing the background color of something equivalent. So there's that. Oh, sure, you'll work. So background, fuchsia. Great. Sorry, just checking to see what's going on here. So this is the one next to the checkbox. Okay, perfect. Just want to make sure I'm not completely crazy. Sweet. Well, that goes and loads up. There was something I was going to mention too. There was a awesome control that got, so the term in Android is action button. And I think that's probably what it's called in the material design spec as well. I'd have to double check. But somebody was asking in the chat about going through and building one out. Let me see if I can find that image real quick. Yeah, this guy here. Somebody in the Gitter chat was asking about building up a control that looked like this. And so in our library, we've already got a pop-up box that has a style where you can effectively get this kind of button effect going through. But our current one doesn't allow for basically having these labels off to the side. So just as a fun programming problem, I may take that on at some point because this looks like a fun control to build. I personally haven't needed it in any of my apps, but I know that this is a very common design, especially among mobile developers. And so this might be a fun one to build out so that we have a nice simplistic style to work with. So if anyone wants to play around doing that, go for it. I do think this type of addition, because like I said, we've already got the pop-up box where it'll take the list of buttons and style them out like this for you. What's missing is the ability to specify this label on top of it, which I think would be a nice addition to the library. So let's go back here, and we've got this guy. Let's grab our text box. Fields. And we are looking for the big one with a checkbox that has a lot of fuchsia. So this is going to be a hard one to see. So magnifier, please. because unfortunately we need to zoom all the way in on this guy. So I believe it is Windows Plus, and that looks a lot better. So now this guy's properly getting blocked, which I believe is the expected look. It is interesting to me that that corner seems to be getting lightened. So let's zoom that back out. But that could just be the subpixel rendering. That is interesting to me. Okay, now I have to look. So let's see if we can do this. Let's remove the background color setter altogether and then take a look at that, because I think that could just be the border, the way that ends up looking. Come on, live XAML update. Oh, come on. Deleting a background color should totally do it. Oh, I guess we can look at the one down below because it's the same style. Look at this corner. Yeah, it must be with the magnifier and the subpixel rendering that on that rounded corner it seems to lighten. Okay, so I'm not gonna stress about it. So that appears to work. So the last thing we want to look at then is on this style. Come on, take me there. So this guy here, keep going down, keep going down. Okay, so the change here, so this is the border where the, hang on, what's going on? What is going on here? Are we looking at the wrong one? Text field, no, template binding. So here's the outer border. This is the one where it used to be getting applied. It currently has a background of transparent. I believe we can just whack that, because hard coding that to transparent does nothing for us. Let's fire that up and make sure we get, oh. Let's make sure we pick that up, and as long as that looks the same, I think we'll just update this PR with that change and merge it in. And I think that'll bring it through. And we'll be getting really, really close. As I'd really like to get this 2.6.0 release. It's been kind of sitting on the docket ready to go out, or wanting to go out, for like a month now. And unfortunately, due to my lack of free time, it's just been sitting there. So I do appreciate everybody submitting issues and pull requests. It's been great. There was a question that came up on one of the issues of somebody asking what the holdup was, and the short answer is it's me. I only have a certain number of free hours in a week to devote to open source work, and so I try to allocate as many as I can, but unfortunately my current life setup with small children requires me to focus on them. So hopefully that frees up a little bit, but we'll see. I enjoy doing this, and I do it a lot for fun. So okay, so there we are, and Windows Plus, and same effect on that corner. Excellent, 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 excellent. Perfect. So we can put that change in on the pull request. So view changes, we only want this change. Bring it forward, please. And then I think that should be it. So it's just the whacking of the transparent on the background. Removing transparent background setter. So commit change. And again, functionally, or I should say visually, those two things are identical. The only difference, and we can revert this change. The only difference between transparent and unset is a little bit of performance when it comes to figuring out what elements you can click on. So also, if you're wondering, like if you're trying to catch mouse events on like a grid or something and you can't get them, that's almost assuredly because there is no background, and you're not able to register that. So set a background color of transparent in that case, and you will pick them up. So let's let me grab this guy, and I think bring this guy back across. So this guy comes in here and refresh, so because now we've got new changes. Great, great. That did not refresh with my change, so let's try one more time, GitHub. What? Did I revert the wrong change and push the other one? Oh, don't tell me I did that. Oh, I did do that. Oh, dang it. Sigh, 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 sigh. Okay. So, not this change. This change. And view, so stage all changes, and I think it lets me force push. We're going to find out. If not, it's a small enough change to go back. So yeah, force push. So when in doubt, rewrite git history and cover over a multitude of mistakes. Hey, look at that. See? I didn't make a mistake. Don't know what you're talking about. Method or... What did we hit? Oh, because control is null. Huh, interesting. I bet you that was because we changed the control out from under it, and the live XAML update didn't know how to handle that. That's okay. I am less concerned about those type of issues. So now we refresh. Hopefully that guy jumps off. Okay. Background is set. That is set. We drop this setter altogether. Great. Approve that, and let's merge it in. Should probably wait for the checks. Probably. There's no, this is the weird part, is there's not actually going to be unit tests on this. So we might just squash and merge and go. Let's do this. So that goes through. And so this guy should be closed. This guy now auto closes. And once again, we are getting closer. This guy is, and I wish there was an easy way to get back to my milestone. That'll work. Okay, so I think that guy should be closed now, and we're down to 2. So bug or hue slider option. Anyone have suggestions? Do people care? We've reviewed a bunch of PRs. Let's fix something. We'll just start with the bug. So basically on this one, so we added this new button assist corner radius, right? And the issue being the ripple itself is now able to ride on top of the button. And so if you're looking closely, you'll notice that the ripple now extends over the top of the button. So let's take a look at fixing it. This shouldn't be too terribly difficult. Step 1, we'll pull in the latest changes on master. Switch branches. Go, 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 go. And then I don't need this branch anymore because we merged it. And ReSharper, go ahead and reload everything. Sorry, Tide, I just saw your comment. And I've lost context of when you said me. Can you help me out for a moment? Uh, Also, if there's anything that you're interested in seeing or something other than completing these items that you're interested in, I am happy to go through. Oh, I'm glad someone cares, Tide. It's always good. I know that this streaming time is really bad for a lot of people throughout most of the world. I know that a lot of people that end up watching this are either in the United States or Europe. And so in the US, it's somewhere between 9 and 1 a.m. that I start. And in Europe, I know it's like wee hours of the morning, like 5 or 6 a.m. So I understand that a lot of people don't watch it. Uh, the one you left is my pull request. Ah! Well, tell you what, Tide. Since you are the one that's on, let's go and do that one next. That way, if I have questions... Oh, hey, look at that. If I had been paying attention. Let's switch. And we will go and knock this guy out. Are you planning on using this control on one of your projects? Is that the incentive behind it? Let's see, 1264. You did? Oh, interesting. Is it something that's been released already and being used by users, or is it still in the works? Okay, so still working on it. Cool. I don't know if you noticed, but if people are interested in, I did add this page over on the wiki. If people want to show off, because I am always curious on the apps that people go through and build with this. So projects using material design. So if anybody builds an app and you are interested in it, feel free to drop it in here with a link and a screenshot or whatever have you, and a little paragraph about what it is, because I am happy for people to show off their stuff in here for my theme selection in your application. Awesome. Yeah, if it's something where you're able to at least show a screenshot and a link, I don't care if it's open source or something for enterprise type work. If you're able to share it and show off, I think a lot of people enjoy seeing the types of stuff other people build. Okay, so color picker, and I think okay, resharper, reload. I think if I remember right, did you, because there was the changes for the color picker control directly, and then, okay, sweet. So I think what we'll do is I'll just fire this up in the demo app, and then try toggling this just with the live XAML edit. And see how it looks. But I assume if it does, let's see, what do we got? So style for the repeat button, target tile repeat button. Are these different styles in here just because of the different orientations? I assume vertical and horizontal have slightly different layouts. Okay. That's what I thought. So slider horizontal. Oh, good. We had kind of already named it that way. Perfect. Reorder. Thumb. Slider vertical. Reorienting. Stylus. Press and hold enabled. Oh, nice. I oftentimes forget about some of the stylus stuff. Oh, but I guess that was in there prior. So that could have been Robert Snipes that put that in. That is one thing that I am always somewhat sloppy about, because most of the time for my WPF apps, I'm not dealing with touch interaction. So I do technically have a Surface Go I could test things on with a touch screen. But for people who keep an eye out for stuff like the stylus and the touch interaction, I do appreciate that, because that is always one of those blind spots that bites me every so often. Dock panel, huge slider position, so that just moves that guy around inside of the dock panel, and that moves it. Okay. Sweet. Let's see how it rolls. I mean, it all looks. I don't see anything jumping out at me, so as long as it works, I see no reason we can't just merge this guy in. So let's fire it up and see how it goes. And I believe that guy is going to be the color tool. So let's see. There is kind of an outstanding item. I know I've mentioned it on stream before, of things that need to get done. Is there is your app will behave very weird if you try to use the new 260 theming libraries in combination with the old palette helper methods. It won't work right. One is expecting to replace and one is expecting to append to the resource dictionary, and so you'll end up with extra resources. Things won't change, or you'll get sort of it changed the first time but not the second time type behavior. So don't do that. At some point, and I don't know if I'll get to it before 260 releases, I want to go through the demo app and remove all of the old palette helper invocations. Those methods are still going to be there and they still work. So if you upgrade to 260 and you don't want to do the new theming stuff and you're using the old APIs, great, you can leave it. It all works just fine. The only thing you can't do is mix the old APIs and the new APIs together. So if you start switching over the API calls, change them all over. Don't change half of them, or you will have a bad day. Because unfortunately, I don't know of a way to change that without implementing breaking changes. So, okay, so, and I believe it's this guy right here. So that defaults to the bottom. And let's go find where this guy is located. So, color picker, uniform grid, secondary. I'm at the uniform grids. I'm too low. This guy should have been above me. Selection controls. Oh, come on. Where are you? What's the name of this guy? Color picker. There we go. So let's do something like hue slider dock, wasn't it? Come on. Some IntelliSense would be great. Some IntelliSense would be great. Slider position. Okay, so let's go there. Oh, that looked rather nice. That is interesting. So, so left, bottom. It's probably part of the live XAML thing. Changing the dock is causing it to reset the slider position. That's probably okay. Because ultimately what's happening is, well, let's look. I think the answer is it's swapping out one of the data templates with the style trigger, which is somewhat expected. Nope, wrong project. Let's go look real quick, because that's probably okay. I think most people are probably going to have their, so let's do this real quick. Set it to the right. This is nice. I am wondering what's causing this extra margin at the top and bottom versus when I put it on the bottom. Is that same margin there? I guess it is. It is shortened. Okay. let's do this. I just want to relaunch and make sure that this slider position, because I know the live XAML edit and continue does very bizarre, weird things at times. And I just want to make sure that when we load it up, this guy was setting an initial color, and I just want to make sure that when the slider is docked vertically, that it reloads that color correctly, which I assume it does because there was nothing in those templates that should cause any breakage. And if you're using this control in your app, Tide, just be aware that, at least in the demo app, I put this delay on here because the app gets pretty laggy. I've wanted to go back and look at the performance and see what can be done about it, but ultimately it ends up doing a couple color conversions while you're dragging. So it converts it to HSV color space, does the conversion, and then converts it back to RGB. So it tends to be a little slow, and so I put this delay on the binding just to keep the thing relatively responsive. You may need to play with that a little on yours. At some point, I suspect we're going to need to do something a little nicer, but I don't know how to quite get around it. Oh yeah, that works right. Yeah, then added more conversions after that. That makes sense. Yeah. So, I like it. I like it, Tide. And then this guy here should just magically work. So one last thing I want to check. So I made the mistake of actually writing unit tests over this control, but I don't think there's anything in here that really makes that big of a difference. Dragging the slider hue changes the slider. Yeah, I'm a little less concerned. So there's this really weird fine line about unit testing a theme library like this. I feel like we should unit test the controls themselves because there's functionality in there that should be unit tested, but obviously we can't test things like the style triggers in the XAML. Those are either UI tests or actual like CodeMonkey run the test. And given that this thing clearly passed CI, I believe. Yep. I'm going to say looks good. So, great work, Tide. I will take it. So, approve. And submit review, and we will merge that in. And now we'll go and fix a bug. And I think we might get this whole 2.60 release all knocked out the door. Awesome. And so if you're wanting to pull the latest stuff, Tide, AppVeyor it's probably just kicking off like crazy. It runs NuGet packages on every commit to master. Oh, glad to enjoy. Have you been using it in your new app? The 2.60 theming stuff, I mean? Awesome. And I'm guessing based upon that it's been working rather well, which is good. I've been trying to see if people are actually using the preview NuGets, so I try to watch the download numbers just to see if it's actually getting tested. I hate to push stuff out and then find out breaking issues later. Oh, awesome. That is what we like to hear. So I can only claim some of the credit for the new theming stuff. Robert Snipe did a lot of the initial work, including that color picker control. I just came behind him and got stuff merged in and took credit for a lot of stuff. So, but he actually did a lot of the work. And there's actually more features potentially coming with it. We kind of scrapped. He has several additional pieces that he wanted to add into it that I wasn't sure were fully ready yet or were still being worked on. And so we got kind of the core theming stuff changed and in, but I think it laid a much better foundation for stuff coming forward. So let's go back to that milestone and snipe that last bug. So 1288. Okay, so this guy I'm going to close so that Visual Studio doesn't freak out, which it's about to. And then we'll see about finding that. I think the issue is probably just where the ripple's being applied with the corner radius. I'm hoping it's as simple as maybe setting clip to bounds on something, but I haven't actually looked in at this code yet to know where it is. So I'm going at it kind of blind. So is this stuff kind of like a hobby for you, Tide, or is this actually for work? I'm working on one or two more. Ah, cool. Oh wow, it is a fun hobby. So on your color conversion stuff, if there's anything you want to contribute back on that, I would be curious to see it. I believe, and let me go and look. I can't remember where this landed, but there are some additional color space ones in this color manipulation. Yeah, yeah, these ones here. I had gone through and marked them as internal because they weren't actually being used yet, and I didn't want, so me being lazy, I didn't want to make them part of our public API if I wasn't ready to actually support them. But there's probably some good use cases for being able to bring these other color spaces forward and potentially have the color picker maybe have an option on there for pick the color space you want to work in. That way people can kind of get back the values that they want and maybe potentially avoid some of those odd conversions. So stuff to be done. I've done enough stuff with fun color spaces and computer vision that it's interesting. I figured you wanted to keep this simple. Yeah, at least for this release, I want to keep it simple. But I wouldn't mind if you wanted to either open like a pull request or an issue and just show what you ended up doing. Seeing how other people have built out stuff sometimes is really helpful in kind of trying to shape the API, just so that it at least meets one person's use case, if not necessarily everybody's. Cool, yeah. Always love looking at people's stuff. Okay, so let's jump in here, and this is going to be the button stuff. And I think, was it you, Tide, that went through and separated out the button pages on the demo app? I'm trying to remember. I know I had opened. Always easier to critique than create. Amen. Amen. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, because thank you for that, by the way. Areas of this demo app, they just kind of grow and get out of hand, and then I realize, usually too late, that that we've got a mess on our hands. So I do appreciate the help in getting that stuff fixed. So let's take a look. Where is the corner radius ones? Buttons with corner radius. So that'll work there. Let's see here, corner radius. Let's just fire this up real quick and make sure that we can recreate the problem. Step one is always recreate the problem first and then actually verify you fix it. So if this is a hobby project for you, Tide, does that mean the app that you're building with it is open source or something that you're keeping closed source for now? Come on, Visual Studio, you can do it. I know. Recompiling's hard. Gotcha. Cool. Yeah. And if you ever want somebody to take a look at it or critique it, I know there's been several people who have posted apps and have just asked for feedback. I'm a little unusual in that I love doing code reviews for people. Um, I know that usually my coworkers laugh at me for that one, but I actually enjoy doing them. So um, I found out recently that on GitHub you can uh, take a look at your contributions, and I noticed that my code reviews on pull requests are almost as high as my pull requests themselves, which is fun. Yeah, like I said, especially people who've been helping contribute to the library, I don't mind helping out and at least reviewing somebody's app and pointing out stuff that I see. Where was I going? Buttons. Buttons. I was doing corner radiuses. That's where we were. Okay, so let's see here if we can actually, I might need to adjust this. Has this been fixed already? 2050 corner radius. Okay, so let's go back and make sure I'm not crazy. So specifically throwing a feedback on there so that we have a better color to look at. And I am apparently not the only one who enjoys fuchsia as my to-do color. That does not appear to have gotten applied. 2050 radius. That is that one. So let's restart. This is again one of those areas. The custom attached properties, the edit and continue just seems to fall apart on. It is getting better, but not perfect. I think the line I normally use with people is it works great right up until the point where it doesn't. But I know people have commented a lot about different issues with the Visual Studio Designer. And I know there's areas of this library that don't necessarily play nice with the designer. A lot of that comes from the fact that I know at least me and several other people that do a lot of WPF development, one of the first things we usually do is turn off the designer. It can be really helpful when you're learning to try to figure out how to lay things out, but a lot of times I find that it just gets in the way, and I would rather use the live edit and continue to know, rather than having a design that shows me what my app might look like, the edit and continue shows me what my app does look like, which is what I would prefer. Something's wrong. Did this actually... Okay, so I'm either on the wrong button or this didn't actually pick up the right bit. Is there another 25? No. This should be here. Tooltip. Am I crazy? Button with rounded corners. With rounded top corners. With rounded corners. Ah ha ha. I think I am looking at the wrong one. There we are. Ah, there we go. Now we can see it. There's the fuchsia. And it is clearly going outside. Okay. Whew. Scared myself for a minute. I was going to say, I didn't think I had merged in any changes that should have addressed this. So, thank you, Tide. Let's go through. Okay, so, and actually maybe we just start and follow it through from here and go here. Okay, so I was on the right style. So let's take a little gander at where all of this stuff goes. So corner radius is being applied here, and the ripple is set out here. So, yep, that'll do it. That will do it. So the ripple is going to ride on top. This guy's going to get a corner radius applied, and this guy won't pick it up. So the first question is, does Ripple support corner radius? It's a content control, so the answer is, I think, no. Pretty sure content control doesn't have a corner radius, because I thought it was only on certain things that have borders. Yeah. So no corner radius there, but let's go and look at the ripple control, because I'm wondering if the solution is simply to add the corner radius into the ripple. That must be in the generic. So for anybody going through trying to find where things are, typically the themes are all under a corresponding name with the control. However, there's a default generic one that contains a lot of just the standard ones. So let's just collapse the Visual State Manager for now. And this is effectively where the problem is. Okay, so I think the only option then is to wrap this guy in a border and clip him. Is that correct? I think it is. The problem is then I need to pull all of this stuff out. Yeah, because if I have a horizontal content alignment of centered, and a corner radius, I expect it to still be clipped. So, oh boy, this is going to get interesting fast. Because if I wrap this, well, okay, so the fix for this is going to have to start going down this path. So you get inside. So then we want this guy to pick up the corner radius, same as what that guy does. And then more importantly, we want clip to bounds to be true. So if we set a major corner radius on this guy, it's going to go through and effectively clip it. However, this isn't quite going to work nicely. So this will fix our immediate problem. So if we relaunch, this should address the first problem. However, I think we're still going to have an issue if we have, say, a horizontal content alignment of centered. Say we bring the content of the button in tiny, and then you click on it. I would still expect the ripple to be around that centered portion rather than being able to expand outside of it. And this will still allow it to expand. But one problem at a time. We'll make sure this properly clips, and then we'll set up the failure case and verify that we can fix it properly. And I think we might end up actually, let's just make both of these buttons go fuchsia. That way we've got two test cases to play with. The other thing is the live XAML edit and continue does not really play nice when you're editing control styles. It sometimes updates, but I've found that more often than not, it just fails, which is frustrating. So Tide, while I have you here, something I had been contemplating doing is basically putting together a series of streams and videos, one on techniques on using Snoop, and then another on just sort of generic WPF development, specifically MVVM patterns. Are either of those things, would those be interesting to you? Let's see here. No clipping. Yes, both. Okay, good to know. I started to kind of just write out outlines of what I wanted to cover for those. So why did that not clip? So background blue. Be bold and obnoxious for me. So those do work, but why? How are you still able to float over the top of that? Okay, I'm somewhat confused. Oh, are you living inside of an adorner? Is that how you're able to do it? No. This is just a canvas with an ellipse. And the Visual State Manager, I assume, just animates it. Yeah. Scale X, scale Y, and opacity. Yeah, nothing fancy on either of those. It literally just animates an ellipse inside of a canvas. So, why are you not clipping? Oh, do I have this backwards? Let's take a look. Okay. Losing faith in live XAML, edit and continue. Snoop it is. Because Snoop, I know, so this is the one big advantage of that I like of Snoop over the whoa, Win32 exception. Okay. I'm guessing Snoop, we had a little fight between the live XAML edit, continue, and Snoop. The big advantage though that I like over Snoop is, to a fault, it will try and let you modify absolutely anything, whether it be properties on your backing view models, just randomly invoking methods. It gives you a lot of string to hang yourself, and you can use Snoop to get your apps into very, very broken states, ones that your users should never be able to get to. But at the same time, it can be quite helpful in that it lets you modify stuff at runtime and go through and do it. So that's the good, whereas the Visual Studio Editor is a lot more restrictive in what it lets you edit and modify. With that said, the Visual Studio Editor does have the advantage because it has the context of your source code. It can do things like click to show me where this style is declared in my source code, and so it can help you navigate up those styles a little bit easier. So there's a couple tasks that it does better than Snoop, but for what I tend to do, use Snoop for, which is a lot of visual debugging of, okay, why am I getting this color? Where did this come from? Why is this property not being set? Or in this case, why is my ripple not properly being clipped? In those cases, I find Snoop is just so much easier to work with over the Visual Studio one. But it also could be my bias. I have also spent a lot more years with Snoop than the Visual Studio one. Okay, so Snoop, binoculars, target our window, and then we'll navigate. Okay, don't worry about the blue. Let's just verify we're still broken. Yep. And then the big secret with Snoop is you put your mouse over the control you want and hold Control Shift. And it automatically searches and finds the control inside of the visual tree. It's worth noting it tends to find the innermost control that it can hit test inside of the visual tree, whereas like the Visual Studio one typically uses the logical tree and would like stop at the button, which is more often what you want. So this is our ripple, this is our border. This is where we automatically set our blue, so let's just turn that off for a minute. And this border should have a corner radius set on it. Corner radius 25, 25, 25, which should be clipping, but it's clearly not. Clip to bounds is true. What the heck? Okay, so inside of my grid I have a canvas. Inside of my canvas I have an ellipse, which is not visible. There's my canvas there. Height, width, and then the content presenter is the stuff actually inside of this. So the ripple is there. Let's jump back here real quick to this button. So this is the background of the button that got the corner radius applied. So effectively we've got so we can ignore the progress bar for the moment because this is just for the progress button stuff. In fact, we can self-close that tag. So the progress bar, or both of these are sitting in an adorner decorator. So they're sitting at the adorner level. There's a grid whose only purpose is because we have multiple children and one needs to sit on top of the other. A border with the background of the button that's getting applied, and it gets a corner radius and whatnot applied, but the key part is the content for the button isn't directly inside of this border. It's over here, and the content for the button sits inside of the ripple. And the ripple is where our problem is, because this guy, we'll just turn this guy off. Hopefully he doesn't break Snoop all over the place. Yeah, the edit and reload caused all the content to die, but that's fine. I am clip to bounds is set to true on the ripple. Why is that not being clipped? I am actually baffled on this as to why this guy is not properly clipping. Because in general, that is exactly what clips to bounds should do. Maybe I am missing something obvious here. Because normally, because there's other fun tricks that you can do with like, oh, is that the problem? Does it need to be masked off? So there's another property on here that's common with like opacity mask. Let's take a quick look over at the color zone, which I think is also in generic. Because there is a feature I put on the color zone a while back where you could control the which sides of it the shadow appeared on. And it does it using the same sort of trick where it clips off the shadow at the sides where it doesn't want it on there. So clips to bounds true. Let's see. Grid opacity mask. Shadow edge converter. Interesting. So let me remind myself how this actually works, because I don't actually remember. So pulls the thing through, verifies the values are the types expected, verifies we don't have nans or infinities, grabs the drop shadow, and builds a rectangular based upon it. And then does a drawing brush with white, aka turn all the bits on, because an opacity mask is a bitwise AND of the pixels. And so this just draws through putting white everywhere, so show all of these pixels, but it also effectively can clip off other elements. So I'm wondering if that's the thing, is border clip to bounds doesn't work the way I expect. Okay, When in doubt, Google with Bing. WPF, border, clip to bounds, corner radius. I am not the first one to run into this. Is it in a canvas? Does not clip its children. So you are correct. So there is a canvas at play in here, Tide. It's specifically inside of this ripple. So we have a border here, and then the ripple whose visual template gets applied, which is this guy up here. So we technically have a border inside of a grid, and inside of the grid we then have a canvas, and the ellipse is is the actual ripple effect that gets animated in and out, which is effectively the problem that we're dealing with. So I agree that a canvas wouldn't clip its children, but I thought I could clip a canvas, if that makes sense. But maybe I am wrong on that. This does not look easy rounded corners for anything. This sounds more like what I want. I want rounded corners on my ripple. Let's see what this Stack Overflow indicates. Oh boy. Clip to bounds is for, oh. Got it. So that is my flaw. So clip to bounds is for layout, which means I should probably look up the docs on that. So this is effectively the same problem. And so this one went down the opacity mask approach. Dang it. Okay. Okay, fine. We can go down that path. That was yuck, 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 yuck. Okay, well, that's probably the better solution, because then I don't need to deal with moving these properties around. Okay, let's go that route, because that'll assuredly at least work. And so let's see here. Opacity mask. So I don't think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. So we basically need this guy here. Well, let's actually jump back here real quick. How did he go about generating it? Pasty mask visual, and he took a visual brush and passed in the element. I don't like doing that directly. So the problem with putting an element directly into a visual brush is it will work right up until you have something like a moving progress bar, and then you'll start to run into problems. Because I think what I would rather do is just take the corner radiuses and draw an appropriate rectangle with them to clip by. Because I don't necessarily want my opacity mask to match that. But the problem being is this mask, like this guy here, is going to need to be similar to this, where we end up needing to do a brush. So I either need to pass it a visual brush, or a drawing brush and do the drawing myself. Which one seems like less effort to me? Because I think we just go with a multi-binding and a converter to get the brush. Because again, I don't necessarily want to do a visual brush and just do something like pointed at content. Because really I'd end up needing to actually point it at this border. Does that work? Not well, because if I point it at the border and say somebody sets the background to transparent, then that fails. I feel like I want to control that. Oh, hold on. Here we go. We can cheat. So opacity mask, visual brush, visual brush. What is it? Is it control visual? And here, let's go ahead and whack you off. We just bring in this guy, and we put you in place there. We change we whack the name of that because that's not what we want. We grab that, which will be fine. We change the background to solid white because we don't want too much. We don't want somebody just toggling the background and causing their content to disappear because of this mask. We let that go through. Template binding to border thickness is fine. Border effect. And I think that works. Let's run it. I'm also tempted to go through and only conditionally apply this mask if there is a corner radius set. So I think corner radius has like an isEmpty property on it. I mean, we could do a isEmpty converter. So I'm wondering if it matters that we're just blindly applying this in all cases. Top left, top right, bottom. Oh, there is one. It's just internal. Not helpful. Not helpful at all. But I believe this will work and fix this corner radius problem. It is interesting. I guess I never have used clip to bounds outside of a rectangle before. Because what you can do in a lot of cases with your controls is to kind of get like an overhang effect. You can do negative margins. So you can actually, rather than where a margin pushes it in, typically, you can set a negative one to let it go outside and float. And usually you end up setting clip to bounds to false in most cases to let something go outside, because a lot of controls or styles will default to clipping, which makes sense because most of the time you don't if you've got a control where you've set its size to be 100 by 100, you don't expect the children to exceed that size. Whoo, that's not right. That is really fun though. So that's what an opacity mask does to you. What did I do? So So let's see. This opacity mask is getting applied. Boy. That's exactly right, Tide. Oh, okay. So the opacity mask gets applied. It picks up a visual. These ones shouldn't be making an effect. Oh. I bet you I know what's happening. So it's getting the corner radius specified, but this visual inside of the visual brush isn't actually part of the tree. So it's not. So if we were to open this guy up in Snoop, he would not show up as part of the visual tree. So what's happening, and again I think, is the only reason we show a size is because of this corner radius. So the ones without a corner radius, oh, there's still a little bit there. I'm a little shocked at that. But I'm thinking the issue is this guy's size has absolutely he has no content or relative parents to figure it out. So he just has to render, which is problematic. So I think what we want to do is, let's do width, and I don't know if I can get away with this, but we're going to try it anyway. Element name, border, actual width, and same with height. Binding, element name, border, actual height. So the subtle difference between the width and height properties and the actual width and actual height, these properties are the request of what size it wants to go to, and these are the ones that actually got set after the control was laid out and measured. So hopefully this now sizes our border, because ultimately I want the border inside of this mask to exactly match the size and position of this border. That's the goal. I'm also realizing this guy has padding applied to him, and this guy doesn't. That's probably fine because the padding would apply to the content. Then why not just go? So the risk that I'm worried about by binding it directly to the my border or this border control up here, Tide, is in the event that somebody sets the background color to transparent or black. Right now, if you do that and you set the background color to black, that will, it works. You get a black button with some content on it. But if you were to set the opacity mask to something that's black, that effectively deletes those color bits, which white says turn all of the bits on, black says turn all of it off. So if somebody were to change this background color, they could cause their button to disappear simply by changing this background. And that's the only thing that's making me a little weary about it, is that seems very counterintuitive, specifically because this border and the content of the border are not directly related to each other. This guy just happens to sit on top. Yeah, it's kind of a weird layout. I mean, I understand why it's there. It's because we've got all these fancy buttons. But, hey, look at that. No! No, no, no. Oh, but that somewhat makes sense, because I've now done the exact same thing. Wait a minute, I'm confused. This border should have a corner radius, and the color should not go outside of it. So what just happened? Okay, back to the Snoop. Whew. System cannot find the file specified. There is something weird going on here. I did recently take Visual Studio Update, and I wonder if something changed. Or maybe I need to update Snoop. I don't remember the last version I pulled. It could be rather old. I think this is probably at least the right path with this mask on here. It does make this a little more difficult to debug. So why? If you have a corner radius, you should be rendering, well, okay. So still buggy, right? Yeah, okay. Dive me in. So on this ripple, let's look at, so next Snoop tip, this window up here lets you just search for stuff, which is awesome. So that that is what, get off of there. So I mean, that's what I would expect, a rounded corner with white. Interesting. What happens? XAML edit continue, did not find any things to edit. Because if that, what would do this? What would do this to me? Because the alternative is, rather than going with a border, we go back with like a rectangle. The only issue with just doing a rectangle rather than a border is then we have to also account for the size of the border thickness in addition to just the size of the border itself, because we don't want to accidentally clip off something. Though, we're only looking to clip the inner content. I guess in that case we really don't care. I'm okay if I clip the ripple as soon as it hits the border pen or the border brush that's going around the outside edge. That way it looks as though the edge is what actually clips it off, which probably makes sense, because if you set a border thickness with a border brush, I think having the ripple stop when it hits that border is probably expected, or at least it's not counterintuitive. That did absolutely nothing, which instantly makes me skeptical. So when we bound this guy, so hang on, this screams of some sort of binding failure. System data error, object source, cannot convert null. Really should deal with those. No binding failures on any of these. Why? Why would that not pull through? Okay, once again, back to the Snoop. And let's go and look at this guy again, because this should be... Let's go back. So this guy suggested rounded match, stretches to fill grid. background white, corner radius 7, and uses that. And then it clips. So this is the stack panel and any content. Yeah. So effectively just loads this over the top of his other grid. Okay, this feeling like I'm not getting anything more useful out of that. Okay, so let's back this guy up. Go take a look at his mask. Yep, rendering pretty much exactly as it would expect. Show me your width and height. Oh, I'm inside the brush. I need to look at the brush's visual. So look at here, actual height, actual width. That all got rendered correctly. Did you pick up a corner radius? Yup. So let's go down here and change out. Well, let's just play with the width, I guess. Just make sure this guy is actually working the way I think he's working. Okay, too much scrolling. Width. So from 124, be 50. So now if I click, I expect my ripple to stop about halfway. And it's not stopping at all. So this opacity mask applied directly to the ripple is not doing what I expect. And I bet you I know why. So even though we apply it to the ripple itself, that doesn't mean that it's actually used in the controls template. Yep. So just because a property exists doesn't mean it's actually used. And in our case, we expect it to be applied to the grid. Yep. What do you bet that? I don't trust you right now. Relaunch. Let's try this one more time because I'm willing to bet that that was the problem. Is even though we set it on this control, if it's not used, nothing recognizes it. The template doesn't use it, and the property is effectively meaningless. So we should bring it forward. This is a common problem when retemplating controls, is if you don't template bind all the properties, somebody may set one of the properties and then get very confused, like myself, as to why setting the property seems to have no effect. Then the answer, it gets dropped. So I'm willing to bet if we were to look down a level, we wouldn't see anything happening. This is also a reason why typically when the easiest way to modify a control is to set like the data templates. That way you're mucking with the content and not the control itself. But in our case with a theme library, it gets a little more complex. Let's see if this does it. we could always wrap the ripple in something to get the behavior, but no point in adding to the visual tree if we don't have to. Especially since we control the ripple, we can fix it. Okay. So, please work. No. No, no, no. Canvas left. Ba, ba, ba. This unfortunately looks very similar. I really don't want to have to do some sort of custom rendering and measuring stuff. That really doesn't feel like what I want. Background of the border you want. That way you don't have to put padding and a margin around it, but oh, yuck. So canvas inside of a border, same technique. And canvas left, op 1. That does not look like... I am wondering if you're right, Tide, about the canvas being problematic. Oh, I just really, really, really don't like these options. Just having to effectively manually do your clip. You know, we could do the clip directly rather than a mask. I wonder if that would be a cleaner approach. Let's try. Let's give this a try. So though, let's put this back to white real quick before I get too carried away. Let's just try this one more time, because I do expect this to work. Does beg the question, if this is white and the background is or the outer area is transparent, if that doesn't effectively clip. I got one more thought on this visual if this doesn't work. I may put this inside of a grid, because I'm wondering, so this border, when it draws, effectively draws a rounded cornered border. But then the question is, if you look at the rectangle of that border, what's outside of the white? And the answer is it's unset, so it effectively draws transparent. And I'm wondering if it draws effectively the hex value 00 FF, FF, FF. Because if that's the case, and the opacity mask doesn't take alpha into consideration, which it would, given that we're trying to do opacity, it would not shock me that it would remove those and just do the bitwise and across the board. then that would block it out. So my thought is effectively to put this border inside of another border and have its background be black. That way we have black around the outside of a white and use that effectively to clip it. So if this fails, we might try that first before we go carried away too much on the clip. So yeah, that doesn't play nice with the other children. So border, background, black. I wonder if that's what's causing the problem. And you go there. Do I trust you? Do I trust you? Nope, still going to relaunch you. Because this puts you over the top. Because this should limit the size to exactly match this one. Yeah, and we saw that the bindings on all of these went through and worked. Because when we examined this border, we saw that the width and height of it were set appropriately and the corner radius was set appropriately. So everything is flowing correctly. It is just not properly clipping that ripple like I would expect. And we did modify this so that the opacity mask does convert all the way down. I'm wondering, because we want it to ultimately get applied to this canvas, so I think applying it to this grid is correct. I am wondering, ripple assist, click to bounds. Oh, don't tell me. Don't tell me that would be propagating all the way down. We might double check that just to make darn sure. I forgot about that property. So let's just come up here. Ripple assist, clip to bounds, true. Turn that on. Okay, Snoop, come save me. I am lost and confused. Wow. If this keeps happening, I might have to dig into why Snoop is ultimately failing, because this seems off. So what do we got going on? So on our opacity mask, we have a border. Its inner border, or I should say the outer border, is black, so we've got a black rectangle. Its inner border is white. It's sized to match the background border of our button, so its width and height will match, and its corner radius will match. Great. Same with the border thickness and border brush, but both of these are unset right now. Same with our effect. We aren't setting a shadow depth, or at least we aren't setting one beyond the default, which is fine. I guess we're technically setting a shadow depth of 1. This should cause us to have effectively a black rectangle with a white rectangle inside of it with rounded corners, which should be clipping the content. This custom ripple control takes it in and applies it at the parent grid. The parent grid contains both the canvas and the content. The canvas sits below usually, except for there I know there's a style trigger that changes its z-index. So it either sits at 0 below the content presenter or sits at 2 to be on top of the content presenter, because we needed that for some of the, honestly, for the demo app for the controls that we were using, because the ripple was being applied directly. So let's take a look here. Where do you go? Still no dice. Still no dice. What is going on? So interesting. Okay, so this guy here is not being clipped at all. Why? So this sets the property on the clip to bounds here based upon that, but we're just going to go a step lower and just hard code it here. That doesn't end up causing, all right, layout, not. Okay, so let's go back, and I think I'm going to leave this fuchsia because that's a whole lot, that's a quicker test. Good to know, Tide. There's something, I have to believe there's something weird, either like what you mentioned earlier with the canvas not properly clipping its children, or something with this control template where some of the default properties don't move all the way down. I did go through and add these template bindings. I think I'm going to attempt this clip. I think that's where we're going to go next and see what's going on. Because I don't think this... So here's a quick test just to test this guy out. So rather than setting the ripple, content presenter, or I'm sorry, content control. Yep. And let's take a look at this. So this will remove the ripple, but this will at least let us test if the issue with the opacity mask is with the mask that we've created, or if it's something with the ripple. This should at least narrow down where to start the hunt. And I'm technically 10 minutes past when I normally stop, but this has effectively nerd sniped me, and now I must know the answer. And it's going to bother me in my sleep. This is the problem with good programming puzzles. I can't rest until I can actually explain it. Oh, that does remind me. A couple streams back, I showed a programming puzzle. It was on one of the system command line streams where I showed off a simple puzzle of, given a system type, create an empty delegate for it. and somebody had pointed out that my solution appeared to have an error in it, which I agreed that it looked like it was an error. And then when I started to dig into it more, I found a unit test that actually covered the case in question. Um, and ultimately, I ended up realizing that my code works due to an accidental issue in the runtime. So in the runtime, null is defined to be the bit pattern of all zeros. And so that ultimately, oh, interesting. So that, okay. So that worked. Did that work? I don't know if I can say that that worked. Ah, here's what we can do. We can turn off this corner radius. Yes, because if we turn off that corner radius, try it one more time. So in the runtime, null is. I agree, Tide. In the runtime, null is defined to be the bit pattern of all zeros. And so in the brain teaser puzzle that I had put out, to return null from a reference type, I was just emitting a zero. And it was working. And I didn't fully understand why emitting a zero returned null. But it turns out when you're working at the IL level, if you have a reference type and you emit a zero, the runtime treats null as all zeros, so it works. I did not know that when I wrote the code, but it was a nice accident to stumble into. So rather than fixing any problems, I just documented the code for anyone else who wanted to come across it. Yeah, and if we don't solve this tonight, I'm probably going to end up waking up in the morning with a solution, or worse, waking up at about 3 or 4 a.m. with the answer and having to get out of bed and go to my computer and type it out. That's usually how it goes. Much to the dismay of my wife. She doesn't understand how I can fall asleep and then find a solution to a problem. And I've learned my lesson. If I wake up with the answer, I need to go write it down immediately. Otherwise, by the time I wake up in the morning, the answer's gone. There's nothing left. Glad to know I'm not alone. Okay. That makes me feel slightly better and a little bit worse. So, I still have magnifier open. So, what is it? No, Windows plus. So, because we're applying an opacity mask to this guy, and we would have expected the corner radius to trim it, the issue is with our mask, not with the ripple. Because I would have expected to see a corner trimmed right here with the 2550 radius, and it's not. So that makes me feel mildly better, knowing that it is. Amen, Tide. That makes me feel mildly better knowing that it's not something broken in the ripple and it is just broken with my usage of this opacity mask and the visual brush. So that bothers me a great deal that this is not working the way I expect. So let's do this. It's not a great test, but let's move this content out of here and slap you directly in, right? Let's just make darn sure that this is actually, yeah, I don't quite trust you. Let's relaunch. And let's just make sure that this actually works the way that I expect. So now, inside of every button, I expect to see this black and white layout. So, no corner radius anywhere except this white rectangle in the inside, with a black one around the outside. Why do you not properly trim yourself? What would make this mask not work? Because we know this technique is exactly what we've done before, except for we used a drawing brush here with a very particular size. And in this case, it's drawing a straight rectangle rather than doing any sort of fancy curvature corner rectangles, only because this rectangle is being drawn to account for where that shadow would appear. But it's being drawn to clip the shadow off of particular edges. Because normally if you just do the drop shadow effect on things, it comes off on potentially two sides-ish, one side-ish, depending on the angle that you set. And that's not always desirable, especially with like a color zone where you may just want the shadow along one edge. So this lets you clip it. Yeah, agreed, Tide. That element name I would have expected to be effectively the same thing. Okay, so this... See, this is what's baffling to me. This is exactly what I would expect. I would expect black rectangle, white, around the edge, which should clip. What the heck? What the heck is going on here? Okay, so something is not going the way I expect. So let's change this up then. Let's make this stupid simple. So rather than actually taking in content, the content of all buttons shall simply be the border of blue. Right? And so this thing effectively, because we know it renders correctly, we know it draws correctly, what am I doing wrong? Because this should bring in... So I would expect to get the blue rectangle now, effectively with this applying the rounded corners to it. Am I missing something stupid on Visual Brush? Its value that specifies whether this Visual Brush will run layout in its visual. Is that defaulting to false? Because the part that bothers me is if this was really failing to lay out these borders inside of it, I would have sort of expected that to result in no content being displayed, not all content. And it's clearly showing all content. Okay, let's take a look at this guy. Quite literally nothing being applied. It is worth noting that there is some amount of padding that's clearly being set here. I'm guessing this thing must have a default padding of something. 16.4, 16.4. Which that doesn't visually line up with what I expect, but I'm not horribly concerned with tracking that down at the moment. Because for all I know, that's being overridden in a derive style. Interesting, interesting, interesting. Well, unfortunately, if we don't solve this here in the next few minutes, I may just have to go to bed and have a pen and paper. But if somebody wants to solve it for me, I would not be opposed to a good pull request. Because I'm starting to wonder if the problem is just that I am too tired and can't think straight. Which is a very real possibility right now. So let's see. Mask. Oh. Wait a minute. Never mind. That shouldn't be applied there. I'm at the wrong level. See, I'm at the wrong level again. So the mask set. Clip. Thank you, Tide. Yeah, I'm about at my wit's end on this one, but it's going to bother me, especially since this is the last issue remaining. So I really want to get this fixed before we kick 260 out the door. So I think with that, I might have to sign off for now. I am planning on streaming again at this time next week. So if this works for you, if it's not too late, I'll probably be on again then. There's also a chance I may do another impromptu stream either later this week, maybe next week. There's a system command line issue that's plaguing me that I want to actually get resolved. So if people are interested in the system command line library and working on a bug there, I will probably be attacking that and figured I would live streaming. It's going to be a lot of creating synchronous overloads for async methods and how to not shoot yourself in the foot while doing it. So it's not exactly a trivial thing, and normally you shouldn't ever do it. But in our case, it's kind of required. So with that, I will say goodnight. Thanks for hanging out, Tide. As always, it's been fun, and I'm glad that we made progress, and hopefully it's one last item. I thought it was going to be simple. I thought we were going to knock it all off tonight, but apparently we will do it again later. So with that, I will say goodnight and happy coding.